Hey guys, welcome. This is definitely maybe somewhere we're expecting, some we're not, but definitely a different take to the weekly report, in which usually was a weekly text I would send for our fantasy basketball group chat. And of course, this being the league called Badger Fantasy Association, where teams go head to head playing fantasy basketball against each other in a grueling 21 week season that goes throughout the regular season of the NBA. Um, there was some interesting scores this week. Definitely a downturn on some scores. There's a lot of low-scoring games this week, um, whether it's because of the managers or it's just the dry spell of the season where it's the grind for most players. And you would think that would help the Pistons, but yet they're still 3-32. So I don't know. But next, we'll get into some news around the NBA. Something to start out with before we get into the scores and further along that stuff. Um, but if you're gonna watch anything, and if you're gonna skip through it, make sure you watch the end, especially you fantasy owners. There's some important information there. Maybe I'll put a timestamp right here or something for you to go to. But definitely watch that. Um, this is important for future weekly reports and will help me, better brand you and stuff. All right, let's head into that. All right, on to the news around the NBA this week. Behind me, you'll see some highlights from Week 10. As you see Wemby right here, get this effortless dunk, looking like MJ, yet not from the free throw line. Anyways, starting out with the first news story, we're going to the Magic, who's my sleeper to perform in the playoffs, maybe knock out a team. We'll see. We'll see. We're starting out with this big guy. Shaq had the announcement with the Magic today, or not today, but earlier this week, that his number is going to be retired with the organization. It's a big first for the Orlando Magic, who haven't retired a number ever in their history. And what other guy to do it than Shaquille O'Neal, who had a phenomenal career and might arguably be one of the most dominant centers there has ever been in the history of the NBA. With the Magic, he played 4 seasons and won Rookie of the Year. He was drafted first overall by them and had several championships with the Lakers and the Heat. I believe that was the only two teams he had championships with, but great guy overall. He's very humble, and I'd love to see it for the Magic. On to the next news story. We have retirement in the NBA coming from Ricky Rubio, the man, the myth, the legend. I love this guy. He had a great career in the NBA, and he had a even great career out in Europe, where he played a lot of ball in Spain. Love this guy. He sadly, due to the end of his career, he got a couple problems with his ACL. I don't think he's playing this season, or he's supposed to come back, but I think the ACL injury is still bugging him. Um, and I think considering that, he announced his retirement. What a legend, though. He played for several teams. He's on the Cavs now. While he was on the Jazz and their playoff push back in like 2017, he got the first triple double for the Jazz in the playoffs since John Stockton did in 2001, which is pretty cool. But long live the legend. Love you, guy. Have fun in retirement. On to the next piece of news. Uh, we had a trade actually happen this week in the NBA between the Raptors and Knicks that saw key players for owners of this league. OG Anunoby got traded from the Raptors for RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. I think an even trade for both sides. I would have expected the Raptors to get a first rounder, but nonetheless, in terms of the fantasy league, Teo had OG Anunoby, which might see a downturn in his fantasy points considering he has more stars around him. Uh, Although it might be great for OG to have more reliable guys around him to play winning basketball. So we'll have to see in the coming weeks if his points go up or down. But my gut feeling is that he's going to lose some fantasy points due to being on a more winning team that has more well-rounded players around him. As for RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley, Brian had RJ Barrett, who had a great starting role with the Knicks and will not lose those minutes. Might even get more minutes with the Raptors. Uh, As we saw this week after the trade, RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly stepped in, but into starting roles on the Raptors. I think both these guys are going to get an uptick in points just by the sheer amount of time they will play, especially for Emmanuel quickly. But I believe for Brian and Sherm, this is a big dub for them. They'll definitely get the needed minutes and points from these players. Sherm definitely needed it, considering his guard situation is lacking. Emmanuel quickly will hopefully get those points for him in a much needed time for him to make a playoff push. On to the next, and I believe last news story we have, which is heartbreaking for the Warriors, although it might help them build some young pieces. Chris Paul broke his hand, or I guess fractured, but basically a broken hand, which sucks. There's no timetable for him. This is going to impact Will's team even more. It sucks for him, considering that his points production is already lacking to a certain degree. Um, Hopefully, it'll return in a timely fashion. But the bright news for this, at least Will has Brandon Pomdemski, who will see a great increase in minutes with Chris Paul out. So hopefully Pomdemski could pick up the slack, but I can't see him doing what Chris Paul can do as of now. Maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe it'll be a Jordan Poole situation. But you just hate to see it, and it might impact the Warriors' season playoff-wise, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, now on to the scores of the week. We'll look right here. I beat Noah in what would be a win for Noah in most other games this week. I scored 290.25 to his 215, which 290.25 is a top tier number. A top tier. We haven't seen anybody break 300, but we might see that soon. I mean, we've already have week after week players scoring in the upper 200s. So who knows? Great win for me. I had a lot of people turn up. Shout out to Anthony Edwards and Paolo, who we saw earlier. Paolo's been diamond it for me. Now, on to the next game. Aiden beat Ryan in not a must-win game for Ryan, but for his playoff push to try and chase after Riley, it was needed because Aiden was bottom half the league. He was in that 8th position. Now, on to the next game. Riley beat Webb in another close game for Riley due to the fact that one of his opponent's players were out. This time it was Jimmy Butler for Webb. If he had Jimmy Butler, I could see this game going the exact opposite way with Riley winning. But, that's been a trend for Riley's opponents, them missing a guy and having them leave it in their lineup or just having to replace with a bench piece. But, results are results, and Riley is going to be 11-0 this week, so there has to be some respect put on his name for show. On to the next nail-biting game. The Codfather sadly lost to Sherm's team in an ever so close game of less than 6 points. I mean, that is one managerial choice away. You hate to see it, but that's where mere playoffs happen, and you gain the edge if you win these close fights. If you lose them, you're that much further away from winning a championship. And that's going to be the theme here with Gal beating Brian by 5 points. A very close week. Jokic performed for him in the end on Sunday. Definitely a close game. They were playing the Pistons, so Jokic didn't really have to play, but I don't know. Brian was also missing DeAnthony Melton, which if he just played somebody else, it would have definitely gone the other way. Now, after that, we had Teo lose to Jake by less than 5 points again. We see that 3 straight games, less than 10 points. It's just utterly, you just hate to see it. But like I was saying earlier, that's where playoff spots are made. You get the 4 seed instead of the 6 seed just because you win these close matchups. Here, it's heartbreaking. Teo and Jake have both been in this situation throughout the season. You just hate to see it. But this time, Yarm's coming out with the dub. putting him at 8-3 is gonna definitely increase his odds for getting a better playoff spot. As for Teo, you just hate to see it. It's these close games where it just it hurts a team's morale. But you got to keep your chin up. There's plenty of games left in the season, still 10 more to go, and he still has a chance to maybe get a playoff spot if he wins out. Now for our final matchup, Will played Zom this week. Zom handled the matchup well. He had a real team effort in getting the dub this week by a considerable, almost 60 points. Um, as for Will, um, Giannis had almost a third of his points, basically. That is the bread and butter of his team. And some weeks that works out, some weeks this happens where it increasingly more seems like if you get 200 or more points, you have a good shot at winning this. But if you don't, you're in you're in the hands of your opponent really. Um, but great game overall, and that's the standings. We'll move on to the top two players who scored this week, and then after that, we'll move to the standings and then our final notes. Now for the top two scoring of the week. Um, Vil came in with the number one player, Giannis Antetokounmpo, scoring 58.5 points for one player this week. Absolutely insane. He dropped 44 points on 19 for 28 shooting, with accompanying with 14 rebounds and 7 assists. Great for the guy. Great for Will. Um, Sadly, it didn't help him in the dub, but you love to have the accolade of picking the best matchup of the week. That's what makes good managers good. On to the second best player, Jason Tatum, picked by Sherm. He dropped 45 points with a 38-point game against the Pacers, 14 for 23 shooting with 13 rebounds and 6 assists. I hate the Celtics, but good pick by you, Sherm. All right, on to the standings. Along with me going over these, there will be some stats and other little tidbits coming along with it. Riley's at the top, 11-0. Somebody's got to beat this guy. Maybe it'll be Ryan this week, who plays him in week 12, or me in week 13. After that is tied in second, or the differentials in the standings is based on points for, which is the second column. Right now, Riley's has less points for than Zom, which is interesting. Yarm catapulted over Ryan after Ryan's embarrassing loss this week. So now Ryan is 7-4 along with Luke and Sherm. Luke had the most worst picks this week, even though he won. He had 4 worst picks, but he got the job done. So you can wipe his hands clean this week and try better next week. Then Team Beluccio, he is now 6-5 on a 4-game losing streak. Absolutely tough. And some of these games he could have won if, like this week, if he replaced one of his players from the bench. But he's still in playoffs. He still has a great shot of going in. If you have a winning record at this point, you have a pretty solid spot in the playoffs. Now to the 8th seed is me. I'm 5-6 on a 4-game win streak with a statement win this week. 290 points is not a small feat. That is huge for the rest of the season. I take the 8th seed over Small, who had it in the previous week. I had the best top picks. I had 5, with a lot of other teams having 4, interestingly enough, even though it was a downturn of scoring this week. But even so, Aiden is now in 9th, also 5-6. He's also on a 3-game win streak, which is great to see. That is a matchup to look out for next week as I play Aiden. After that is packed nicely. Will, Sam, and Noah are all 3-8. You hate to see it, but they have a good shot. I mean, they're only 2 games out of 8th place. Noah, though, is on a 5-game losing streak. You hate to see that. Hopefully he can turn around next week. He can't keep this up if he wants playoff aspirations. After that, Teo and Webb are 2-9. Uh, you know, it's not looking great. Might be a time to decide whether you're tanking or going for playoffs. You're only 3 games out, but with 10 games left in the season, you gotta decide now if you're gonna make a playoff push or not. And it's not necessarily the worst thing to not make one. You get a number 1 overall pick. Maybe it's not as great as of a guy as Wemby, but you still get the number 1, who will certainly see minutes on a really bad team. Um, but nevertheless, these are the standings. Um, I will say it is interesting to see the bottom half of the league is kind of neck and neck. Um, there's going to be, in 2-3 weeks' time, I think the playoff picture will become a little more clear. If there are more upsets, I think this will be a very, very tight race. Like this week, Ryan got upset. I can see that happening a couple more times. Um, what we really need is to upset Riley. So bad. Can't keep letting him go on a win streak like this. I believe in the entire history of this league, he only has 2 losses. 2 losses. Um, but on to the final notes. Just want to say thank you guys to start out with for sticking with the league. Um, this league's not going to be anything without y'all. So any input, any feedback, let me know. I want to make this so much more enjoyable, so much more official, so everybody wants to keep playing and try and fight for that championship. Um, and also shout out to Ryan, the intro music at the beginning. He made it. Uh, Very awesome. I couldn't ask for anything more. I love it, love it. I'll have to make the intro animation look better at least. I kind of just threw it together, but um, well, on to the next thing. Uh, don't forget to set your lineups. As we've seen from the scores this week, a lot of people are losing because they don't take out their injured guys and put on a bench piece, or don't utilize their IR, and so on. These games sometimes get so close, and if you as a manager are just keeping track of who's injured and how your bench is looking, good things will come, and you'll get that extra push into the playoffs maybe. May be the difference between the ninth and the eighth seed. Ninth seed where you're missing out the playoffs, and eighth where you're barely making it and have the chance to have a Cinderella story. Um, Now, I had the timestamp from the beginning to probably the beginning of the notes section, but this is the important part for you managers. I need you guys to send me your information about your teams and stuff like that. This is the time to rebrand your teams if you want to. I want to create a video that introduces each of the teams in the league, so that there's a banner video for this channel, and just to have an official spot for each team so that in the future, if for any reason somebody wants to step out, somebody can take over the legacy of your team, or it just makes it way more official. Doesn't have to be anytime soon. We can wait a week, wait 2 weeks, but the sooner the better. I want to get the team stamped out and have it branded so that the fans here, or whatever, and just in the future we can look back and be like, oh, I love the Void, or oh, I love the Codfather. But please send me your stuff. I'll send a more official, maybe a Google form to y'all. But this is the time to rebrand your team if you want to. Um, you can obviously rebrand later, but now is the time to start what your team is going to look like now. Um, and that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys for the Week 12 report. Just the final thing I want to say is, fuck you, Riley. You're going to lose next week. You're going down. I play you Week 13, but you're going to lose before it. Ooh. Bye.
10 assists. Oh, Bancaro. Oh, he is something.